in an academic sense, I have 2 or 3 main areas of focus. The first of these is in the field of political theory and constitutional law. So I'm very interested in asking the question of and exploring the relationship between constitutional theory, especially in the developing world. And my second broad area of interest is to look at legal systems, how the rule of law emerges and is sustained in developing countries. My major area of focus is India. And this second bucket of work is both empirical. I look very closely at the legal system, various facets of it, study specific courts or the system at large, and is mainly empirical in character. The third broad area that I try to focus on is to look at how we can create a constitutional culture in India, one that is critical of the constitution, but one that owes an allegiance to the constitution and helps its development in the 21st century. So the basic structure doctrine emerged in 1973, and what was remarkable when the doctrine emerged was that there was very little political support for the idea that this was a useful doctrine. The court used it initially to strike down some constitutional amendments which were passed in the national emergency of 1975. And while there was some professional, lawyers and some legal academics supported the idea, there was very little popular understanding or support for a doctrine like this. And that's what prompted my early work. And what I did through my work was to look first and foremost at the court's record in using that doctrine. And as with any legal doctrine that evolves across 3 decades, there are some hits and misses, and I tried to understand that and tried to give a better account of how the doctrine could be used. But more importantly, I also focused on whether the doctrine was politically justifiable, philosophically and constitutionally. Unconstrained politics often ends up on the streets, and insofar as we can all agree that there are more civil and organized ways of resolving our differences, the basic structure doctrine is central to the method by which Indian constitutional democracy resolves its most difficult controversies. Debates on Indian legal system reform we can trace them back almost to the emergence of a modern legal system. And we have had issues of pendency and delay and dysfunction for almost across all this time. When I began work on this field in a very serious manner about a decade, 12 years ago, what I was struck by was the lack of baseline data. Just having normative debates about the legal system, should we reform it in this way or that way, were not enough. And I began work doing empirical studies on the legal system. And I think the value of that approach is that we can avoid some hackneyed and lazy kind of conclusions. And I'll give you one example here. One of the standard explanations for delay is that we have too few judges, given the population that we have. That's simply the wrong denominator, right? The number of cases we have is more relevant. One of the most counterintuitive conclusions that one reaches by looking at the empirical data on the legal system is that the most important variable, it appears, to solve the problem of delay is not the number of judges in the court system. The most important variable appears to be to determine the final date on which decision will be delivered in any particular case. One might be puzzled why that should make a difference, because in all legal systems, democratic, open legal systems that have resolved the problem of pendency and delay, they have resolved it not by solving or by resolving every case that entered the legal system. They have resolved it by ensuring that a maximum number of cases that enter the legal system are resolved outside court. Just by identifying the variable, I'm not suggesting this is easy to do, but this is where efforts must be directed to respond to the complex problems of the legal system. So, the justice of a legal system is complicated. If we have laws that give us that unjustly distribute benefits and burdens, an efficient legal system would only make for a more unjust society. So first we need to get the laws we make right. Even if we had just laws, we need a legal system that works. A dysfunctional legal system that procedurally disadvantages marginalized social groups will result in injustice once again. Today in India, we have a complex mix of both. So we have a deep challenge in India to generate forms of justice that would be socially acceptable to the vast majority of the country. In the 21st century, we want to create a country that is a global superpower, which is a global leader in many ways, economically and otherwise. So my sense here is that's what's at stake. We speak so much in terms of cultural soft power today in India, and I think that's a welcome recognition that it's not just about economic progress that makes a country both well regarded domestically and internationally, but whatever our understanding of soft power, it's not entirely about culture. It's also about the values that our society embodies and practices. When we see ourselves as being a fair and just society, we become an aspirational society for the rest of the world. Legal research has had a very checkered past in India. At the time when India became independent, the new nation state invested significantly in scientific research and belatedly in social scientific research. So there is a lot of professional writing in the law, commentaries and treatises that are useful to the practice of law, and very little social scientific and humanities focused research that allows for a broader understanding of law. I'm glad to say that in the last decade that has begun to change. I'm optimistic about the directions that legal research is going in, and we could do much better in the years and decades to come. The opportunity to receive the Infosys Prize, I think, is in some ways a sign for younger scholars who work in the field that this kind of recognition awaits people who work through complex problems over long periods of time. So my message, if anything, would be that buckle down and attack serious problems and do this in as rigorous a way as is possible. And this is possible today in the Indian institutional environment. And the opportunity to both do the work successfully and to be recognized for it is available. I found out about the Infosys Prize when I was out with family on a Sunday evening. I had no idea about the process of the prize, so I had no idea that I was being considered. A huge and a pleasant surprise at the first instance. But then as I thought about it some more, I mean, I take away a few key learnings. Right? The first is the value of doing that kind of sustained work in fields that matter and to recommit myself in many ways to doing that. I've never given up, but the one thing that I can say with all fairness is that your unfinished work shelf gets longer and your finished work shelf is growing, but not at the speed that you want it to. And so the prize is a prompt to refocus on doing the equally important work of building new knowledge in important fields. In particular, I'll mention one, which is to focus on the place of directive principles and fundamental duties and their role in Indian constitutional interpretation. So I have worked on this issue in a very similar vein to my work on the basic structure, and I'm keen to put this work out.